I see 8. Hello, everybody. It is 8 o'clock, and I promise you we were going to start on time. Welcome to the first installment of the Authorpreneurs Roadmap to Success. And I can't talk today, so forgive me. It is the Authorpreneurs Roadmap to Success. And this today is our first show. During this process, we're going to be bringing in all kind of experts in the area of publishing, writing, editing, all of these things. And these young men and these gentlemen will be sharing with us all of their knowledge. They're going to be helping you guys on your path and on your journey into publishing. So today I'm really excited. Like last week, I felt your virtual eyes like coming through the screen at me because I am a Facebook stalker. And I knew that you guys were looking at me crazy, but I'm telling you, my stalking is working for your benefit because we have a great guest today. She has about 18 names, and so I'm gonna have Nicole tell you all 18 names and her bio. But this woman, she has over 10 years worth of experience. She writes for some of the top blogs out there, especially in the African American community. She is an amazing writer, very talented and poignant, and I'm excited. I can't wait for her to share her wisdom with us. Now, listen, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that'll just be totally off the literary path because I absolutely love her too. Like, I watch all of Michaela's videos. I think she's absolutely adorable. You should watch her. Make sure no one steals her because she's the cutest kid ever. And I love how she sings. So we're going to talk a little bit about Michaela because we just should. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to push everything over to Nicole, my better half in business. Go ahead, Nicole. Tell us all about Miss Tracey.
All righty. Tracey M. Lewis Jiggets is a writer, editor, educator, and entrepreneur. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in communication from the University of Kentucky, an MBA in marketing from Montclair State University in New Jersey, and an MFA in creative writing from Fairleigh Dickinson University. She is an adjunct professor at Rosemont College, Philadelphia University, and the Community College of Philadelphia. As a writer, Tracey has published 2 award-winning poetry collections and is the author of 7 books. Her most recent release, The Gospel According to Vivian Grace, was published with Brown Girl Publishing. Of her work, legendary poet Nikki Giovanni says, "It is always good to see flowers spring up from the density of the forest. Tracey Michael Lewis is the newest flower on the forest floor. It will be wonderful to watch her grow." A dynamic and compelling communicator, Lewis has spoken in national venues across the country on a number of important topics and platforms. In 2007, she served as a breakout speaker at the Ministry Com conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Her dynamic presentation on marketing to a multicultural audience still garners positive reviews today. She conducts workshops across the country and has provided keynote addresses for several nonprofit organizations. Please welcome Tracey M. Lewis Jiggets to our first installment of the Authorpreneurs Roadmap to Success Hangout series. Yay!
Hey, I'm here.
You sound awesome on paper. I know you're awesome.
Isn't it good to sound good on paper?
And that sounded a lot worse than I meant it, but I'm just saying, like, you sound incredible. You have so many accolades. What started you in the business of writing?
Well, I hate to be cliche, but I have been writing since I feel like forever. As a young person, really found my place, my space, my safe space, really, too, in my journals. I was always the one at church that was called upon to write the plays and the skits, and even at school was involved in a lot of things related to writing. But I don't think I ever anticipated or thought it would be a career path. I thought it was just something that I did. And I don't think until really about 15 years ago that I even thought or considered pursuing this as a career, as a passion and purpose. So I think my jumping off point was just that the safety I found with words, my love for words. I'm fascinated by them. So I think that's where the starting point is.
Safety with words. Wow, that just touched me for whatever reason. See, you're a writer. From one writer to another, and that did something to me. Can you tell me how hard it was or easy it was to actually find your voice? Because so many writers I come in contact with, they have the hardest time writing for themselves. You find people that you love and you admire and you kind of want to model their work, but then that's not your work. It's just a replica of their work. So tell me how it was finding your voice and then being able to stick to it.
Well, I think that's a journey. I don't know if that's a destination. I think I'm still finding my voice. But I can say that I'm probably more clear now than I ever have been in my life in terms of who I am as a writer, my style of writing, and I'm confident in that. Even when, I may get negative feedback, I'm pretty confident in my skill set, and so I can't always say that was the case. I mean, I've gone through wanting to be Toni Morrison, wanting to be Terry McMillan, wanting to be whoever was hot, whoever I was reading at the time, whether it was commercial fiction, literary fiction, whomever. I wanted to be that writer. And it wasn't, I think, until The Gospel According to Crystal Justine, even, the second book in the trilogy, where I really just began to find my own lane and rock out in the lane, and I'm still figuring that out. I'm still growing. I think that you always have to be in a place of learning. You always have to be a student of the craft. So I think my voice is still changing as I'm changing, but like I said, I think I'm in a season now where I'm much more confident in who I am as a writer. But that took time. I think it takes time for any writer, because you start off modeling yourself. I think you you people that you enjoy, writers that you enjoy, and you model your work after that. But then over time, they should anyway die down in your work, and you should come to the forefront.
True. I do understand.
I want to know how you do it all. You're a wife, you're a mother, you're a professor. Tell us what is your writing process? Because I will be honest with you, the thing that I get from writers most is, I don't have enough time. And then I look at them and say, I have 3 girls. I have a husband that is on the road. There's a lot going on, but I make time. I schedule time to write. So, you have a busy life as well. How do you make time to write?
Well, writing is like breathing to me. So I'm going to be writing, or I'm going to suffocate, literally, like figuratively suffocate, myself. But here's the thing, and I actually just learned this. Shonda Rhimes did a phenomenal commencement speech, and she got me together, really. Like she said that you cannot do it all, that if you're succeeding in one area, you inevitably are failing in another. And it kind of set me free a little bit. Not that I want to be failing all the time in other parts of my life, but it helps me to understand that there's a trade-off in what I do, and to be okay with that. And so I'm learning. Can't say that I'm necessarily always there, but I'm learning to be okay that there are, I am a mom, I am a wife, I am an entrepreneur, I am a writer, I am all of these things, and that there are going to be times where, one thing is going to be maybe a little higher on the list than the other, but that I'm doing this juggling act, and that I want my daughter to see me doing that and see that I can be effective even in that, but I'm not putting all this pressure on myself to try to, I used to tell my students, write every day. You must write every day, and I personally write every day, but I also know that you have to create a system that works for you. So if that's writing every other day for 2 hours a day, and that's what you can give, then do that, but be consistent in that. Don't say, I'm going to write Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but next week it's Tuesday, Saturday, and whatever. Right. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you need to be consistent and disciplined in whatever system works for you. And I'm no longer a believer in this kind of one-size-fits-all way of writing, even though writing every day works for me. I believe, personally, for my writing process, if I can write just 10 or 15 minutes a day, something, if that's, and that comes in many different forms. That's on my laptop, that's recording something in a scene on my phone, That could be, me, taking some notes on character notes or working on a bio. Whatever I'm doing, I have to be invested in whatever my work in progress happens to be. So I used to have try to have a very strict writing process, but I have a 2.5-year-old that doesn't allow that. That right now downstairs is probably wondering why mommy has the door shut in her office. So.
Definitely. Wow. I do understand that feeling of being like full, like completely full when you don't write, because that's how I am too. Like I have to write something because my medium hasn't always been speaking and opening myself up to other people, so it was always opening myself up to my journal pages. So I do understand when you say about being, it's like air, you have to do it, you cannot not write. So right. I do understand that, but I wanted to know, like, for your students, you said you used to tell them to write every day, but how does it feel to kind of have, or to carry the weight, and I don't want to call it a burden, but you have the next generation's voices looking at you for inspiration on how to find their voice and how to place their story in the marketplace or in the world. Like, how do you handle that responsibility, and then what kind of advice do you give to future generations about finding their voice and finding their place in the writing industry?
I try not to feel it too much in terms of the responsibility aspect of it. If I focused on, and I'm a firm believer that I am just a seed waterer. Or a person that there's multiple steps in the process that someone goes through as they're journeying toward whatever their purpose, even if it's not writing, whatever their purpose and passion is. There's multiple steps in the process, and the seed is planted, someone comes along and water, the sun comes out, there's all of these different steps in the process, and I'm just one piece in that process. And so I try not to take my role so seriously. I think I give all that I can give and trust that if they are meant to take that particular path, that the tools that I give them will serve them until the next person comes along and can give them the next piece of it. But in terms of advice that I give, here's the advice that I give, and it's gonna sound real simple and sophomoric, but it is what it is. Right.
Because I understand. I have a book with that title. Right.
From people that say, I want to write a book. I want to publish a book. So my next question is, so what have you written? Well, I haven't really got started yet. Yeah, you probably need to start writing. Toni Morrison always says, write the book that you want to read. Whatever it is that you feel led or driven to write, begin writing. And then after you've written, turn it in, because I believe that the biggest part of writing is rewriting. So go back and make it the best possible book that you possibly can. Then let's have a conversation about traditional publishing versus independent publishing and self-publishing. Let's have a conversation about, should you take a piece of it and submit it to a magazine, or with what genre do you want to? We can have those conversations, but I think so many people try to jump that stage in the process. Let's hone your craft. Let's write a little bit. Let's get your heart on the page first, and then let's talk about because I'm a firm believer that all the other stuff, the publishing stuff, is not rocket science. It's really things that you just need to do step by step. But the part where you should have the greatest investment, I think, is in the actual writing, and that's where you have to start. So many people again say, I have a book in me. Where is it? Let's
right.
Right. So that's the piece that's the advice among all the other things that I can tell someone that I really think is critical for those who want to pursue this as a career.
Right.
So I think that's great. They have to write it. They have to start the process. And I think every author that has written 1, 2, 3, whatever, however many books, we all are saying the same thing to people who have not written. And that's their thing. I don't know where to start. Well, you sit down, eliminate the excuses of why you haven't finished the book. Because that's the other thing that's holding them back. They're hiding behind all of these reasons why they don't feel like they can do it. And I know you come across that often. So let's move past that. Let's, they've written a book. Let's talk about publishing. Now, you have been in the game for over 10 years. Have you experienced both traditional publishing and self-publishing? What did you love about each one of them? And what prompted you to start your new seasons? What prompted you to start your publishing company?
Okay. So yeah, I've been both independently and traditionally published. I actually started off self-publishing my work. I went through that whole neo-soul spoken word poetry movement and began putting together chapbooks for my poetry, which went very well. It was very successful. I was also at that time a graduate student in the MBA program. So my thinking around self-published was that being a self-published author was that looking at the numbers and seeing that if, and this is a huge if, I could market myself well, that the outcomes would be greater and better for me financially. So that was my initial thought. Now, there's a lot that came after that, a lot of lessons learned that came after that. But I published my first novel in 2004. I had published 2 poetry collections prior to that, but my first novel was in 2004, and that kind of started me on this journey of independent publishing and learning what it meant to be self-publishing, which the key really is being able to market yourself effectively to the right audience. And I have to emphasize that enough, to the right audience. Then later on, as I began to build a platform, which I think is very important for writers to know and understand that they have to begin to develop a platform. Don't think that you're going to publish your book and then put them in the garage and if you write it, they will come. No, that's not going to happen. So I began to do a lot of speaking, both on the business side as well as on the creative and writing side. And so that led me to a publisher who heard me speak about marketing, was interested in seeing some of the stuff that I've written, and out of that was born a nonfiction book called The Integrated Church, marketing the Integrated Church multicultural ministry. I was speaking a lot about this idea of multicultural ministry and how do ministries and churches quote unquote market the gospel to various audiences, because it is the most segregated hour of the week, Sunday morning. So that I was speaking a lot on that subject matter, and out of that I was approached by a publisher, which ultimately ended up in a book that took a long time to get to market, and came out actually a week after I gave birth to my daughter. So that was an interesting process. But so that was my entree into traditional publishing. I then went back and did some self-publishing, and then most recently I signed a book deal with Brown Girls Publishing, which is headed by Victoria Christopher Murray and Rashonda Tate Billingsley, best-selling authors. So I've had this both self-publishing, traditional publishing, and this hybrid publishing experience. And what I can say that there's pros and cons to all of it. Where the industry is different today, readers have greater access to writers and books via ebooks, etc. So it is a great opportunity for someone who is interested in putting their work out there to self-publish, but it's also a very saturated market. Everybody has a book out. Okay, so if you're going to go that route, you need to know and be very clear about how you're going to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, which is a big thing that a lot of writers don't know how to do. Traditional publishing is still a viable option. You can still go through getting the literary agent and them marketing your book to a publishing house, etc. The cons of that is just that, your royalties are going to be less than what you would receive in profits, but your initial outlay of costs will not be as much, or very minimal. But then again, even the traditional publishing houses are kind of changing how they're doing business. So those big fat advance checks that a lot of people were getting back in the early 2000s are not as large today. Mm-hmm. So I think what anybody who's considering this needs to do is they need to be very clear about their purpose, ultimately why they want to be a writer. Because here's the thing, a lot of people don't understand, you may be called or led, or however you want to put it, to do one book, not 10. And so a lot of people think that, oh, I wrote this book, I gotta write, I gotta publish. No, you may just have one book in you. One.
Wow.
You know, and so you might have 5, you might have 10, I don't know, but just be very clear about your purpose, have a marketing plan, and then decide at that point which opportunity would be best for you. And you know, I'll stop there because I could go on and on about that.
No, I think that's actually perfect, because that's what Nadia and I are really trying to stress to people. We're trying to show them through this series, and also when we officially launch our business, that it takes more than just being an author. You know, it takes the business savvy to be an authorpreneur, because you can make your book your platform, and your book can get you speaking engagements. Like you said, you had engagement. You got your publisher because you were speaking. So I think it's so important that people understand that you have to have a full package nowadays, because I think because of social media and because things are so quick and so accessible, people are like, you have to come. You have to come with the following. You have to come with marketing sense. You have to come with a strategy, a plan, and then we'll just tack our name onto it, for lack of a better analogy. But in your opinion, do you have, like, what you think the difference between just an author and an entrepreneur is, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, there are people, and I know, that don't want to do the business side, that have, you know, that are phenomenal writers. I mean, just, you know, just ridiculously sick with the words, you know, but that don't, are not business savvy at all, you know. And for me, I'm like, that's okay. One of the key pieces to transitioning from author to entrepreneur sometimes is knowing who to hire. And knowing, you know, where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, so that you can fill the gaps and build your team of people that can assist you with building your brand. I mean, you said it. I mean, traditional publishers are looking for people that already have an established brand, already have followers, etc. Oftentimes, there are the outliers. There are the people that are just brilliant writers that somehow get through the door, and they don't, you know, and they tend to have critical acclaim, not much commercial success, but they have critical acclaim because they're so brilliant writers, but they don't really involve themselves. You know, you used to hear of writers all the time that were loners. You wouldn't hear anything about them. They'd be up in the mountains of Maine somewhere, and then next thing you know, they have a book out. Well, while that exists today, it's highly unlikely. Nowadays, readers expect authors to engage with them because they can click on a button on their computer and have access to them immediately on Facebook, on Twitter. They want you to engage with them. And so that expectation, and you can say it's good or bad, there's arguments for both sides of that, makes it so that authors who just want to write will be limiting themselves tremendously. Yeah. Now, I wish I could be that. I wish that I could sit in front of this laptop, push my stuff out, and not have to go and do the marketing pieces and all of that. I mean, I love y'all. I think y'all, and you know, Nadia, we here for real, for real. But if I didn't have to go and put my face, I would prefer it not to. I think. I'm not sure. I think. But you know, but that's not the world that we live in today. Right. People are information hungry. They can click on a dime and go to Google and get whatever they want. And so they're always looking for you to share what you know and your knowledge with them beyond even what you've written. And so I think that the author is the one who writes a book, you know, publishes it or not. And the entrepreneur is the one who is this hybrid of writer, author, and business person that can then take the two and build a brand that people recognize. I mean, I can name several people that are phenomenal writers, but who have built a brand around themselves where they're known for a thing. And so from that, and I can honestly say for me, I'm still in the process of establishing the brand. New Season Books is a relaunch of my publishing company, where we are publishing transformational literature, what we're calling boundary-breaking books, books that are not necessarily fit in anyone's box, but that will help people grow personally and spiritually. But I had to really think long and hard and create a plan for that, and so I can establish the brand and then grow the brand. Authors, people who just want to sit around and write, which again I would love to do, can't do that. Don't do that, and unfortunately,
marketing is a huge part as a self-published author, and I know that you know that. What are some advice you would give to a self-published author with marketing? Like, how knows who I am? Like, where do I start? The book is published. It's on Amazon.
Right.
Now I don't know how to tell people to go get it. So what are some suggestions you have?
Well, I mean, I think it's always good to start with your circle of influence. Which is Mama and them, but build out from there. Sometimes people believe that their circle of influence is only Mama and them, and it's not. It's their co-workers, their people. One of the things that really works in the self-publishing world is word of mouth. Number one, you have to have a good product. Once you have established that you have a good product, you need to have a plan. I am a planning person, and so many people don't go into this process with a plan, and I mean an extensive plan, that has a budget attached to it, that you understand when you're going to be releasing. Some people just put a book out there and then have a plan. No, you need to have a plan ahead of time. You need to have lead time. You need to, tap the connects and the network that you do have, which is the people on your job. It is your church or family. It is your sorority and organization. Those are the people that you can touch immediately that can help get the word of mouth going. Then social media, Facebook, Twitter. You have to, I hate to say it, you have to be a participant. And here's the thing: don't open your Facebook page on the day that your book releases and start, connecting with people by virtue of the fact that, you have a book out. You need to do that early on. Establish relationships with people that extend beyond just, your book is coming out. So by the time that your book does release, that they don't feel like the only reason why you're speaking to me is because you have a book out and you want me to buy it. You need to respect the space. But you need to utilize it. You need Facebook, you need Twitter, you need to be on Google Plus, you need to be on all those things. But you can't rely, and this is one of the things that I'm learning, is that you can't rely on social media 100%. Because reality is a large percentage of your readers aren't on social media as much as you are. And as writers, we're on it a lot. They're not on as much as you, and they have a lot of other things going on. So you need to still be willing to go and think outside the box of places. I mean, I've done everything from, I've had spa days at a salon where I read while people were getting their feet done. That was back in the day, early on. I've done all kinds. I've done the festivals, the book festivals. I've done readings in the park. I've done all kinds of different things to promote my work. And that's almost what you have to do to establish yourself. And you have to be consistent. So all of that I just said will not work if it's one off here, one day, one off. You really have to be consistent in whatever you're choosing to do, and build that into your life.
That's good.
Now, I'm not sure if you're a one-woman show, but everything that you just said, that can be overwhelming for somebody that's doing this all by themselves. Like, do you have any recommendations of who to hire or how to do this if you only have a budget to hire yourself, so to speak? Or how do we make this not so overwhelming, because that's a lot of information? Like, do you have a step-by-step plan, or these 3 people you should definitely hire and have on your team? Do you have something like that to offer people?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's that old saying of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So in your plan, you have to do one thing at a time. I do recommend that you have an editor that you can reach out to. You need to have an editor or editors, copy editors on your team. You know, one of the stigmas early on of that with self-publishers was that, you know, the quality of the work was not as good as that was being produced by the traditional publishers. And some of that was true. I mean, I remember my first book, I had some errors in my book, and I was mortified, you know. And so the reality is you need to have the editing piece in place because that's your product. So at the end of the day, all the marketing is fine, but if you're marketing a poor product, then right, you know, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So an editor on your team, and then someone who can, I always recommend someone who can speak on your behalf, somebody who's your mouthpiece, you know, not necessarily a full-time salesperson, but, you know, someone who can champion your work when you cannot. But really that's all for, you know, to not overwhelm you, that's all you really need. You need your product, you need your time, and you need a couple of people on hand that can assist you with pushing it. But I've done most of this on my own, and periodically I've had teams of people come in and help me. But I think the editor piece is important. I think maybe a company like yourself that can help you with, you know, getting access. Here's the thing. Here's the biggest thing. You have the internet, the World Wide Web available to you. All it takes is a Google search to find out where the local book festivals are. All it takes is a Google search to find out, you know, where the bookstores in your area are. My challenge many times when I'm seeing people or people who are asking me questions, that they don't want to do the research. They want me to have already done the research and just give them direction. But no, I need you to go out and find your lane. Okay, and some of that is just by, as an individual, going out there, researching the places where you need to go, and then going after those places, not being afraid to call up your local bookstore, calling up, you know, the local organization or church book club or whatever, and seeing if they'd be interested in featuring your book. So it seems overwhelming, but if you have a plan in place, you do one thing at a time, and you can manage it better.
Yes. The truth is, if you're going to be an authorpreneur, if you're going to write this book and, you know, you're not going to work a full-time job, if you're going to work your book, you have to work your book. You have to work your brand. You have to, just like you said, reach completely out of your circle. You're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to write things down, meet people, take business cards. You're going to have to build. And if you're not willing to do that kind of work, this industry will eat you up, and you will have a garage full of books and no reviews.
You don't eat.
Right.
Exactly. That's it, Tracy. You will not eat. Ramen noodles will be your friend. Yes. So you must invest in yourself. And listen, I am a graduate, not even a graduate. I'm in my senior year of YouTube University. And I am saying, anything you want to learn how to do, log onto YouTube. It will tell you how somebody has taken the time to film themselves, crazy or not, doing the thing that you really want to do. So you have to be as passionate about your book, about your vision, about where you want to go in life as everybody else. So it doesn't matter if you bring in 17 people on your team. If you don't have the passion to do what it is that you want to do, you won't succeed in life. So you have to do it. So that's right, Tracy.
And no one, here's the lesson that I had to get, Nadia, was that no one is going to be as passionate as you are about your book.
Yes.
You know, I ain't gonna probably, if you guys can give me 1 second, because I see that I'm darkening here and I want to make sure that there's light.
Okay, that's fine. We could just make sure we're still beautiful. Yep, I am. Right.
Okay, that's check.
Check. We're good over here.
The thing is that I so often wanted so many people to love my book as much as I did, and to be as passionate about it as I am. And I would literally get disappointed because I didn't feel like the people that said that they were on my side were really feeling me like that. They weren't checking for me. You know? And so I was really, like, upset about it. But at the end of the day, I had to come to terms with the fact that nobody is going to be as passionate as me. I have to allow my own passion to fuel me and not be seeking the validation of other people, but to utilize the skill sets and the talents of other people to help drive the vision that I have. Yeah. Because I can cast vision all day long, but not everyone will see what I see, and I just think that's important to note.
Yeah. Do you ever think that an author can create a book that's just, and this is the only way I know how to put it, that is just not ready for the world? You know what I'm saying? Like, people are just not feeling it, like you said. Like, it's just something beyond their thinking, or they're not ready for the character structure, or they're just not ready for the message. Like, how do you encourage that person, A, to keep going and not be discouraged, and B, like, where to find their niche if there is no niche available for them to put their work out into the marketplace?
So I'm going to be real transparent with you guys right now. Okay, y'all ready?
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay.
I'm nervous now.
So here's the thing. My book, The Next Thing is Joy, The Gospel According to Vivian Grace, is struggling a little bit. And I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm going to be very straightforward because I want people to understand. The reviews are great, but it's not doing what I'd hoped that it would do. And I don't know why, quite frankly. But I had to come to a place, and I think every writer has to come to a place where they know who they are as a writer, that they trust the story that they've been given, and that they are working their plan. And that whatever will be, will be. Because here's the thing, some of our classics, I'm talking about, some of the books that were written, Zora Neale Hurston, etc., some of the books that were written long ago did not see the acclaim, particularly commercially, but in general, until after the person died. Oh. Now, I'm not saying I want to wait till I'm dead.
Right. Clutch our pearls.
But what I'm saying is that every book, every story, and at my heart, I think I'm a storyteller more than anything else. And every story has its life cycle. Mm-hmm. And so, unfortunately, we live in a world where the industry says if it's not popping in 6 months, if it's not popping in a year, then it's doomed to fail or deemed a failure. Mm-hmm. But that's not. I don't believe that's necessarily the case. Now, what makes that a challenge is independently publishing, and you didn't invested, X amount of thousands of dollars in your book, and you're hoping to at least recoup some of that money. That can be hurtful and challenging, but that's why this game is not for the faint of heart. Right. You have to go in trusting. If you're going in on the hustle, if you're going in because you're trying to make a couple of dollars, you could very well be disappointed in that way. Mm-hmm. But if you're going in trusting the story, believing that you had something to say, or believing that your characters had something to say, and that their story needed to be told, then you have to trust the life cycle of your book, which might not be 1 year. And that's where I am right now, even with The Next Thing of Joy. I have to trust that the story is impactful, because I've heard that it is, and that it will go to the places where it needs to go, and that it will have the life cycle that it needs to have. And if that means that it doesn't have commercial success, that maybe it's just one of those things that people like, but that, not masses of people are running out to buy it, then I have to be okay with that as a writer if I'm going to survive in this game. And I have to move on to my next project with the same intensity and passion that I had when I was writing The Next Thing is Joy. So, it can happen. Real talk, my previous 2 books in that trilogy did extremely well. So I'm like confused and discombobulated, but at the end of the day, I trust the story, and that's what you have to do.
Was it the 10-year gap, do you feel like, because it was a 10-year gap, right, between the first two and this one, do you feel like that your audience may have changed, their likes have changed? Like, what do you think may have changed that the book is not doing as well as it should be doing?
Well, here's the thing. It's only a 5-year difference. The first book in the trilogy came out in 2004. The second book came out 5 years later in 2009. And then this third one came out in 2000, obviously 14. I think there's a lot of reasons, but the one thing that I do know is that more than my audience changing, I've changed.
Right.
So there's a significant difference in my writing style from today than 2004. And so sometimes, particularly when you have a series of books, the readers who fell in love with Sasha Renee in that first book are looking for that same style. You know, they're looking for that same voice. And if you've grown over a time period and your writing has changed, they may not come along with you. I've moved more in my writing, but just because of my training and the studying of the craft, to a more literary lean. Okay, but the Gospel According to Sasha Renee, the first book in the trilogy, is very much a commercial fiction book. It's very much, you know, chick lit, that, you know, Christian fiction chick lit, or whatever you want to call it. And so to get to the, you know, the next thing is Joy, that leans very literary. Well, not everyone who reads chick lit wants to read, you know, everybody who reads Terry McMillan is not reading Toni Morrison. Some overlap, but there's not, you know, there's some people who don't. So you have to reconcile that. You have to be okay with that change. Because if I am at my heart okay with the change that I've made with the writer, then I have to be okay with the people who may not grab hold to that style. You know, I just, you know, it's just part of what I've chosen to do.
What made you go over into publishing the nonfiction books? I'm sorry, Nicole, you're supposed to be asking these questions.
No, I was that you opened up to our audience about the real life situations of what goes on, because I think so many people get discouraged, and I'm speaking to myself too, because you know, I've published books, but it's just like I don't think they get it yet, you know, and sometimes it's kind of like, okay, am I loopy? Am I on the wrong track? Have I, you know, lost touch? You know, but then, like you said, you just have to trust that the message was relative to you and then relative to somebody, whoever it was for. Because if it was just for you, I think it would have never been published. But because you took the second step and published the book, then apparently it's for somebody else, you know, to see. But I think I wanted to actually touch on your transformational publishing, because that word alone, like, what does that mean? Yeah. Like, what kind of works are those?
Well, so okay, here's the thing. I worked as a managing editor at a small Christian publishing house here in the Metro Philadelphia area. I've done a lot of freelance editing. I've been, you know, to all the workshops and conferences and all of that about publishing and what's going on. And I try to keep up to date on what's going on, not just in Christian publishing, but in, you know, in general, in the publishing industry overall. And the one thing that I've noticed is that we, you know, the industry is still very, you know, box-like. Okay, they want to put you into a particular category, a particular genre, and you need to stay. So, for instance, someone like myself who has made the transition from a more commercial style of writing to leaning, I can't say that I'm all the way there, but, you know, leaning more to a more literary fiction style of writing, you know, that would not fly, you know, in the industry, you know. And so I wanted to create a place for writers whose works were what I call transformational, not just transformational for the industry, but also transformational for the reader. Books that were outside of the realm that, you know, of a particular box. So it's just Christian nonfiction. It's just this. I wanted to play around and bend the rules a little bit. And so authors that come from New Season books have a little bit more freedom in terms of, you know, stretching the boundaries of genres, categories, and being experimental even. Of course, we will have books that are pretty standard fare, but my goal is to build a brand of books that just blow your mind. That's it. I want books that blow readers' minds, that help them transform from the inside out, you know. And so that's why we're starting off with nonfiction, because that's obviously the easiest way to do that. Looking at memoir, biographies, you know, ministry resources, self-help, relationship books. But again, not just your standard fare. I want to publish books that really, you know, that people can't get anywhere else. And so that's where we are at this stage, at this very early stage in our inception.
First of all, I love that. Like, books that blow your mind. I'm all in, and I can't wait to see what comes from this publishing company. But I wanted to ask you, do you think that and again, I'm sorry, audience, I know I'm asking questions for myself, but hopefully you get something from it too. Because I started with a title, and I just started writing this fictional work, but I have published 2 nonfiction books. Like, do you think there's a fictional voice in a nonfictional writer, so to speak, or
a fictional voice? I think that there are people who write nonfiction in a very narrative form, that when you read them, you feel as though they're telling a story, and obviously are, but it feels very fiction-like. That's the closest that I can get to when you say fictional voice and nonfiction. I think that, you know, creative nonfiction tends to be that. It tends to be a style that's very close to fiction, very narrative-like, very much in the first-person voice of the writer, but just happens to be true, you know, or allegedly true. You know? Right. So I think there is a space from that. I mean, there are a lot of writers out there who are doing that, especially a lot of memoir writers that are doing that you really feel like, is this real? It's like, is this a novel? And it isn't. It's their story, it's their life, it's a piece of their life. And I think that I personally love to read that style of nonfiction. I just think it touches the audience more.
But you do think it's possible for a person that normally writes nonfiction to write fiction as well, with no problem?
I do think that it might be challenging.
Okay.
Because nonfiction, journalistic style of writing can come across in fiction as very, I'm thinking of an author now who had this conversation on their Facebook page. It can come across as, lacking emotion. It can be very fact-driven.
Who, what, where, when, why.
So unless you are a nonfiction writer who naturally has kind of that bent, and if that's the case, then you'll probably do really well in fiction. But if you're not, if you tend to be hard facts, straightforward, journalistic style of writing, it can be hard to make the transition to fiction. Not impossible, but hard to do that. And so you'd probably have to study and do some things to help yourself along.
So I want to know so let's talk about how we can get in contact with you. Like, if I am a nonfiction writer and I want to get a book into your hands and I want you to publish, what's that process look like?
Okay, well, we are accepting submissions now, so they can go to newseasonbooks.com, and our submission requirements are there. We're just asking people to put together a nonfiction proposal, just kind of telling us what the book is about and sending about 2 to 3 chapters for review at this time, and then we'll be reviewing them. I'm putting together an editorial team that will help me kind of decide what books we want to move forward with. So that's the first step. Go to the website, look at the submission requirements, and on the website, the email address where they need to send that information is there. And then in terms of just in general, I'm available on Facebook, and my personal website and blog is TraceyMLewis.com.
Awesome. And can you, because this is called the power of self-publishing, can you, like, in a nutshell, say what you believe the power of self-publishing is, just to wrap up our whole conversation?
Sure. So I think the power of self-publishing really is about the power of owning and distributing your story, your own work. There's something about the ownership of the process. Everything from, the beginning, from the writing to the book cover design to the, there's something about, owning that, which you are not able to do in the traditional publishing realm, that gives you a sense of power. And I really think that it gives you it's the driver of your passion, because when you've invested so much into the publishing of your work, you have to become passionate about it. Nobody invests themselves in things that they're not passionate about.
Yes.
So I think the power of it is the ownership of it, and being able to control, your brand and your story out in there in the world. There's a detachment that comes with traditional publishing that I've never been a fan of. There's also, again, there's positives of that, but I'm not as close to my work as I am when I am self-publishing my work. And so the power of that is in what it does in me. It makes me a more confident person to be able to put my work out there on my own. So I think, there's a lot of things that I could come up with, but right now I can see that to own your story and to own the distribution of that is huge. It's the selling point, I think, of being a self-published author.
Wow, that's awesome. I know that's definitely what Nadia and I are trying to accomplish with our business and coming together, because I think that so many people are looking for a place, they're looking for a space where they fit, where they are the standard, so to speak. Yeah. And I think self-publishing can do that, because once you write something, and especially if you print out copies of it, it's like concrete. Nobody can ever say you weren't here or you didn't do something. So even if you don't do anything else, you have that.
It's part of your legacy.
I wrote this.
Yes, right? Absolutely. It's part of your legacy. It's part of, at the end of the day, my daughter Michaela, it will know that her mommy left a legacy of work for her. That means so much, to me. That, this is the story that she worked hard. These are the stories that she was given, because I believe I'm given these stories, and that she worked very hard to put out into the world to do something, to transform people who are reading. And I think that's an important legacy for me to leave with my daughter. And what we all do, even if we don't have children, we leave them with the world. So yeah, absolutely.
I think that's powerful, and I know that that's what we definitely want to do. We want to show people how to find their voice, A, and then B, how to market it, and then C, just how to live with knowing that you have purpose. Because I think that it's a deeper thing for me. It's more than just publishing these books and writing some stories and like the character placement, and things that, I have technical degrees. I can get into the whole thing if I really wanted to, but writing for me, like you said, it boils down to air, and I want people to find out what their purpose is through their words. So I thank you so much for doing this for us, and especially being so transparent on certain parts, because you don't get that a lot from people. They're very closed in, especially about industry secrets, so to speak. So I'm happy that people will see that you're a successful authorpreneur, and that it's not that far-fetched, because she's an actual living, real being. So I could possibly do that too. But if one more time, if you could just tell people how to. You had something else? I'm sorry.
I just want to say one thing to everybody who's watching this. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if I really want to put myself out there. I don't know if I want to write. This is what I often tell myself and what I tell other people. Who are you to prevent your gift from reaching the world? Meaning that there are there are people who need what you have, and so there are people who need your gifting. So how dare you how dare you have the audacity to say that you're going to stop them from getting what they need from you? And so I had to kind of like reverse psychology in my mind and say that whatever I've been given, good or bad, whatever gifting I have, somebody out there needs it or I wouldn't have it because it's meant to be given. It goes through me. And so who am I to get hung up in my own fears and my own hesitations, and stop that and keep that person in chains, keep that person bound. So I just want to leave that out there. You can reach me on Facebook at facebook.com TMLGWriter. You can also, I'm on Twitter at TMLewis. My blog and web is TraceyMLewis.com. I'm also blogging other places at encourage.me and mybrownbaby.com. So literally just do a Google search for Tracey Michelle Lewis and you'll find me.
Michelle. I said Mikael.
I like that though.
Thank you so much, Tracey.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
This has been awesome. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you later.